Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. When the recent HHS mandate became public, few bishops responded as bluntly or directly as my first guest. To talk about his response and the serious religious liberty challenges facing those in the armed forces and the chaplains who serve them is the leader of the Archdiocese of the Military Services, Archbishop Timothy Broglio. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. I want to start with your letter. I want to read a little excerpt so our audience is on the same page with us. You wrote, and I'm editing down here, this mandate is a blow to a freedom that you have fought to defend and for which you have seen your buddies fall in battle. The administration has cast aside the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, denying to Catholics our nation's first and most fundamental freedom, that of religious liberty. We will not comply with this unjust law. Tough words.
Indeed, and I think the situation merited that kind of response and that direct response.
Now, when you issued this letter, you wanted this read in the pulpit the following Sunday. I think you sent the email out to your chaplains on a Thursday.
Yes.
And on Saturday, you heard from the U.S. Army Chief of Chaplains who took issue with reading the letter. What was the problem?
The problem, according to Chaplain Rutherford, was that he felt it would endanger the priests, that they could be in a situation where they might be seen as being critical of the government. In my response to him, I said that, that this had already been defined once by the courts in a very famous case of Perry versus Rigdon, in which the Air Force was told that what a chaplain says in the context of his religious service, even if it's about a political matter, is acceptable.
And falls under the First Amendment.
And falls under the First Amendment, exactly.
The protecting religious freedom. So how did you all figure this out? You ended up calling him.
Well, what happened, he actually called me when he received the letter.
Okay.
And wanted me to rescind it, which I, of course, refused to do. And then his chief of staff sent an email message to the senior chaplain, not necessarily the Catholic priest, but the senior chaplain, directing the senior chaplain that, because of course the chief of chaplains has rank but no command, so he cannot give an order. So he recommended that the letter not be read, that it be made available at the back of the church for those who would want it, and that the priest celebrant make a comment about it in the announcements.
But not reading the letter itself.
Not reading the letter itself.
But eventually they did read the letter.
Oh, indeed.
After your pushing back.
Well, the initial pushback was some of the more senior chaplains contacted me privately. That's how I knew about the message that had been sent out. And they asked me what they should do. And I said, well, do what I told you to do. So many of them read the letter. Of course, in those situations, they don't have that much to fear because they're already senior in rank.
Right.
Most of them have already been in the Army for many, many years. The problem is really for a younger chaplain who might be confronted by a senior chaplain of another faith who is telling him not to read this letter. However, in the process of looking for a resolution, I called the Secretary of the Army, and we agreed that we would wait until Monday to come to some sort of a decision. And then he called me back and suggested that, at least in the Army version of the letter, I remove one small phrase.
The line we read at the end, that we will not, well, we will not comply with this unjust law. Why was that a problem?
He felt that he said, I understand what you're saying and you know what you're saying, but he felt that it might be interpreted by some as an incitement to violence or to civil disobedience. Well, to a certain extent, it is an incitement to civil disobedience because that's really what we're forced to do.
Archbishop,